it's a form of fascism, isn't it? I mean, these people...
It's worse than that.
The kind of the ultra woke brigade out there, they categorize themselves as liberals, but there's nothing liberal about that mentality. When you have a cancel culture, which is driven by, if you don't agree with what I say, you're going to get shamed, vilified, cancelled, fired, maybe even imprisoned. That is actually what fascist regimes do to people, to their populace.
Yeah, but the fascists are more straightforward about it, because they basically come out and say something like, shut up or we'll beat you.
Right.
Whereas the compassionate types, who are narcissistic compassionate types, they come out and say, well, we're really trying to save the world, you know, and we're acting in everyone's best interest, and we think it would be better if you should just, you know, regulate what you say, because if you don't, you're not a good person.
Jordan Peterson, many already know him, joined Piers Morgan to discuss a phenomenon that now reaches far beyond American borders: woke. A word that has become a political weapon. Some still see it as a call for justice and progress, but for others, it's the face of a cultural battle driven by a small but forceful minority strategically anchored in key institutions: school, media, languages, universities. Over the years, influence was quietly built until we reached the point we are at today. A point where criticism is often hard punished and debate are replaced by moral pressure. There's a quote that keeps coming back, echoed by critics and thinkers alike. When fascism returns, it will come disguised as anti-fascism. Now check this out.
It seems to me, in my 57 years of being on this planet, that free speech has never been under more ferocious attack. Not in places you would expect, like authoritarian regimes, but actually in democracies. I never thought I'd come to a day in my lifetime where people were literally being fired or in some cases imprisoned for expressing honestly held opinions, even if I find those opinions grotesquely wrong or offensive.
You know, it's worse than that. People underestimate the significance of this, because we're not having a fight about who has the right to speak freely. That's nothing. That's a peripheral problem, even though that can be serious in and of itself. We're having a fight about whether or not your claim that free speech exists is nothing but a masquerade for your willingness to dominate and use power. And so if I was taking that tack, I'd say, it's all well and good for you to speak about free speech, but look, you're white and you're middle class and you're British and you're privileged, and you have this theory about free speech that your ancestors derived, but the only reason they ever derived that to begin with is so they could exercise their power. There's no such thing as free speech. That's just a lie to mask a power claim. And that's a way worse cynical criticism of the notion of free speech than you can't speak because I don't agree with
I mean, it's a form of fascism, isn't it? I mean, these people...
It's worse than that.
The kind of the ultra woke brigade out there, they categorize themselves as liberals, but there's nothing liberal about that mentality. When you have a cancel culture, which is driven by, if you don't agree with what I say, you're going to get shamed, vilified, cancelled, fired, maybe even imprisoned. That is actually what fascist regimes do to people, to their populace.
Yeah, but the fascists are more straightforward about it, because they basically come out and say something like, shut up or we'll beat you.
Right.
Whereas the compassionate types, who are narcissistic compassionate types, they come out and say, well, we're really trying to save the world, you know, and we're acting in everyone's best interest, and we think it would be better if you should just, you know, regulate what you say, because if you don't, you're not a good person. And so it's much more, I'd take the fascist bully over the compassionate narcissist anytime. They're way more straightforward.
I mean, we live again in an era where the hashtag be kind almost invariably is used by people who are the least kind people I think I've ever encountered. In other words, people that love to be utterly vicious.
Yeah, well, kindness...
And yet they hide behind this fake persona of hashtag be kind.
Yeah. Well, kindness is tricky, you know, because one of the things you deal with very commonly if you're a clinical psychologist, apart from depression and anxiety, is, well, behavior therapists offer assertiveness training. And now the people who need assertiveness training are often people who are too agreeable, compassionate, polite by temperament. Now, the problem with that is that they let people walk all over them because they don't stand up enough for themselves. And the consequence of that is they get resentful. and then they get bitter, and then they get conniving, and then they'll mob. And so, because they'll do anything for everyone else, but they push themselves beyond their limits, and then they won't even recognize the limits because they feel, well, if I'm not doing everything for you, then I'm not a good person. It's like, no, a good person does a little for you. Like if I'm acting properly with you, say in this conversation, there's something in it for you, and there's something in it for me, right? And we want that to be reciprocal. And so the cost of me bending too far in your direction is that I'll become bitter and resentful and conniving. And resentment is an unbelievably toxic state of being.
I'm from Germany. We are not like the Brits. And we are definitively not like the Americans. Everything taken 10 years longer over here. But when it hits hard. We don't talk a lot, but when we do, we mean it. What's slowly swinging back to your center in your countries, over here just beginning to erupt. Kids are being led into worlds where any sane parent has to ask, is this really what I want for my child? Meanwhile, grown men are showing up in protected spaces, kindergartens, schools, and seem to be playing out fantasies they used to keep hidden. And if anyone dares to speak up, boom, public shaming. A single online mob is enough to make others think 3 times before they say a word. And look, I'm not even judging. Maybe this is just what happens when society gets tight. When we are so far removed from real survival that we are just start manufacturing problems just to feel something. But here's something worth to remembering. Rome was advanced too, and the decadence brought it down. After that, the world went back to what it really is, cold, ruthless, and brutally honest. And now, listen this, and if you like, hit the subscribe.
One of my favorite movie clips is Rocky Balboa, who's probably the non-intellectual version of Jordan Peterson in many ways, because he said this to his son, who was getting a bit spoiled and entitled and moaning about being Rocky's son and so on. And he says this to him.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
I love that speech.
Yeah, it's good.
What do you think of it?
Well, that ethos was what lifted up Sylvester Stallone to stardom very rapidly with his first movie. And what do I think about that? I think that young people are literally dying for that message. I mean literally, they're so demoralized. It's just beyond belief. And so one of the things that's been painful about what I've been doing with my wife as we've traveled around the world for the last number of years is to see how desperate people are for an encouraging word. It's no wonder that young people are demoralized and anxious because we're doing everything we can to demoralize them and make them anxious. So on the masculine front, we tell young boys that, well, the world's a terrible patriarchal tyranny, and all of that patriarchal tyranny, which is the whole explanation for history, has done nothing but oppress and exploit people and destroy the planet. And so that any manifestation of that masculine impulse on your part is equivalent to the world-destroying force.
Want to hold a secret weapon in your hands? An argument sharper than any sword, stronger than anything Jordan Peterson ever wrote? Just one sentence that flips the whole conversation on its head. Here's it. If a man already that awful, who raised them? In today's culture, women are often portrayed as an eternal victims. Men driven by testosterone and physical strength. It's a default narrative, easy to repeat, hard to question. And sure, if someone feels overlooked, rejected, or wronged, it's tempting to say, it's not me, it's the toxic masculinity. But let's pause this for a second. If mothers are the emotional backbone of a family, the source of love, values, and empathy, then why do some boys grow up lost, angry, or broken? Is it always the absent father? Or could it sometimes be the mother, who knowingly or not, used the child to carrying her pain or fight her battles? Not to blame, but to ask. So no, this isn't about blaming women. It's about honesty, responsibility, and the courage to ask the question nobody wants to hear. Because if men really are broken, then who handed them the blueprint? This isn't just a rhetorical trick, it's a mirror. A single sentence, sharper than any sword. And once it's spoken, the whole narrative starts to shake. Now let's hear from someone who spent his life cutting through the noise. Jordan Peterson.
Well, I think, first of all, that annoys narcissistic women, no end. And it annoys people who think that there are no biological or cultural limits on how we manifest our behaviors. And also, it frightens a large number of women because many women have never had a good relationship with anyone masculine in their life. And so the notion that they would need to establish a trusting relationship with a man, especially if he's also in something approximating a superordinate position, which is what they might like to find him maximally attractive, also implies that they're in some sense going to be under his sway. And if there's no trust there, well, that's absolutely terrifying. And I have some sympathy for that because there are no shortage of women out there who've never had a positive relationship with anyone masculine. And so they're completely unable to discriminate between narcissistic power and compulsion and confident competence. And so because they can't distinguish that and they're afraid, they put all of that in the same category, which is something like the predator category. And that's not good for them because, well, as you said, all men aren't predators all the time. And they need to establish a relationship with a man.
I was always told, don't cry. Worse, I tell you something uncomfortable. My own mother used to cry, not because she was sad, but because she knew it would control me when I did something wrong. I love my mom, but it took me years to understand how manipulative that kind of emotional weapon can be. It's why I struggle to trust women, especially when they shout feelings. Because deep down, I always wondered, is this real or just another move? Look, women may not be physically stronger, but they have weapons too. And some of them cut deeper than any punch a man could throw. And if you felt something like this, share your story in the comments. I would like to read it. That's it from me today. And if you want to see another very important video, what can change your mind, then click the next one. I thank you for the time. See you next time. Ciao.